Hello, everyone. Welcome to BuildShip and Webstudio live stream. I'm here with Oleg, and he's the founder of Webstudio, and we are going to have a really fun session building something together in 1 hour. So, thanks for joining today. So let me give a quick introduction of what BuildShip is before we jump and hand over to Oleg for sharing what Web Studio is. So for those who are not familiar with BuildShip, BuildShip is a visual low-code backend builder. So essentially, it lets you create APIs, schedule jobs, AI workflows, and anything in the backend API kind of world in a visual step-by-step manner. So essentially, you can drag and drop different nodes we have. And if any node is missing, you can generate with AI. And when you're ready, you can click ship and you will be able to get an instant API. So that's what BuildShip is. And it works really well with a platform like WebStudio. So I'll let Oleg introduce yourself and what you do at WebStudio.
Hey everyone, I'm Oleg. So I created WebStudio as a way to build front ends and make sure it's super flexible when it comes to backends, because backends are really messy and there is a lot of backends, there is APIs, there is a lot of things going on. Basically, the entire internet is one API away, right? And so I wanted to build a tool that gives you just the front end without the rest. Intentionally, no backend, no CMS, but the best front-end experience we can possibly have. Visually, without writing code, as far as it goes. And so BuildShip is kind of perfect for WebStudio because this is the exact opposite of WebStudio. This is the exact missing part for building anything that is dynamic, anything that needs a database, anything that needs any user data, gated content, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's great because that's a great combination tutorial for us today because we want to decouple both front end and back end. Have the perfect kind of situation for you to build your front end the way you want and combine it with the back end like BuildShip that kind of makes the complete app building experience great. And two good visual back end and front end builder combination today. That's what we're going to see how we can build with Web Studio and BuildShip. And the use case that we're going to start off today building is building AI assistants and how you can integrate them and showcase them on the website. And then how you actually connect it with your own data, with your own kind of data. Maybe if it's in Google Sheets, and it can be in any database as well. And then your user can chat with this in like a chat widget style thing where they can ask questions. So think about customer support or even like user acquisition on your website. When they're trying to make decisions, they can chat and figure out what's the best product for them. So lots of opportunities here. So that's what we're going to do today. And the way we're going to structure it is going to be very fun build together kind of session. So please feel free to drop in your questions and we will get to them towards the end of this session. I'm gonna start off with building the backend first, and then we will see how we can plug it into Web Studio. So that's gonna be the rough agenda for today. So yeah, let's get into it. Let me share my screen first.
By the way, you can shoot any questions you have in general. We'll try to answer them all after we are done with the demo.
Yeah, exactly. And we are streaming this across different platforms, so you can ask questions in wherever you want. But YouTube is the one we are monitoring heavily. So if you want to join on YouTube, you can watch that there. Cool. So we'll also share a lot of relevant links towards the end of this session as well in the description of the YouTube. But essentially, when you log into BuildShip, you get like this experience where you can create workflows. So everybody is familiar with workflows where you start with some kind of input and then end with some output. And then we have a lot of templates for you to start with so that you don't start with some blank canvas and don't know how to go about it. So we have like a bunch of templates that you can explore and play with and pick the one that is very close to your use case. So I have cloned here the chat with Google Sheet template. So this template. And what this does is, first step is your trigger. So how do you want your workflow to be triggered? Since we are connecting with the front end, we want the workflow to trigger with an API. So API is, it can be a get or a post type of request. Here it is a post type of request. And what this does is then all the incoming inputs that are coming to your API, it passes on to the next node. So we have actually a lot of nodes that you can play around and add to your workflow. And if something is missing, as I said, you can generate with AI. You can basically say, given this input, I want to do this logic and I want to return this node, right? So I could say, you can even use NPM packages. I can paste some code snippet from somewhere and give a rough idea of what your node should look like. And then it'll give you a no code version of that. And then every node in BuildShip, you can also look at the code. So, as in the theme of open source and open kind of experience, we have all the code for each node available that you can take a look at, explore, tweak it any way you want. And then when you're ready, you can also test individual nodes and so on. So this template is doing a couple of things. So let me run that, right? So as I said, first API, then we have this thing called assistant node, which is basically an OpenAI assistant node, which connects to your OpenAI with API key. And you can create an assistant on OpenAI and give it give that assistant ID here. And then from that point onwards, you can connect any tools to your assistant. So typically people do this in code and deploy it somewhere and then have to figure out how to use that functions within the assistant and so on. Whereas here we are giving this no code experience to build the assistant. So in OpenAI, you just simply create a assistant and you just get the ID and paste it here, but you don't do anything else on OpenAI. You just can build it entirely on BuildShip. So you can say all the things that you want to say that your assistant has to do. So think of it like a job description, right? So you're instructing this assistant to do a couple of things. So here I am instructing it to say something related to the use case here. So suppose the website is for like a home specialist where they're selling a bunch of furniture in that kind of a decor range. So you are saying all the things like, hey, you are a home specialist. You have knowledge about this furniture company's products. Your task is to be informative and helpful to the user and so on. So you can go as detailed as you want in your prompt. And then at the very end, you basically tell what it needs to do. So the function calling part comes here in the guidelines. So as I said, this is a template. So we give you this example so you know what to do, but you can actually change this completely. So here I'm having a Google Sheets, which basically has some furniture companies products. So it has like the name, category, description, price, etc. And then on BuildShip, you are saying that, so when someone starts the conversation, you must use the get sheets to get access to this data, and then use that information to have a meaningful conversation with that person with the actual knowledge of your website and your company. So that's what this is. So here I added a Google Sheets. So you can just say Google Sheets. We have also like, Supabase, Firebase, and other kind of databases that you can connect. But very simply, you can use Google Sheets. You can also use Airtable, any database of your choice, right? And then when you do connect, you just simply provide a URL. You do the OAuth-based authentication, and then you're very much able to now start using this data in the assistant. And then the second thing here in the assistant that you need to configure is your user's prompt. So it's the question that the user is asking via a chatbot. So here I'm saying, this is the incoming message from the request body, as you can see. And then finally, the thread ID, if you want to maintain the conversation. So if you want a user to come in, ask a question, and then the AI responds and it has a follow-up questions. So that conversational style, you can also maintain by passing the thread ID in the body. And you can use any document retrieval or code interpretation kind of tools that are built-in tools that OpenAI offers. Yeah, that's kind of pretty much it in terms of configuring this OpenAI assistant, which can chat with your Google Sheets. Say, suppose you want to add more tools. What do you do? So you can just simply go here and add a tool. Say, for example, if I want to add Notion, right? So say fetch a page from Notion, and you need to give a bit more descriptive information like it's not just fetch a page, right? If your company has a specific page which has some product FAQ, you can say fetch FAQ page and something like that. And then you can say the purpose of this node is to retrieve information about the frequently asked questions about the product of this company. So as much details you can give here, the better. And then when you add this node, you can just simply connect with the OAuth and then give the page ID of your Notion document. Then immediately now your assistant is able to have this additional piece of knowledge on top of Google Sheets. So yeah, that's how you kind of build this roughly. So let me get rid of this actually for now. And then finally, your assistant is returning the message. So whatever message that came through, it's able to return that here. So yeah, that's kind of overall what this workflow looks like. And when you ship it, you'll immediately get like this URL endpoint that you are able to start using in your workflows. And we'll also have this thing where, especially if you use a OpenAI assistant, we are launching this chat widget builder of sorts, where you are able to plug in this endpoint URL. You can customize your widget a bit, like give it a title, a greeting message, and things like that. And then finally you can copy this code snippet. Then you can use this code snippet in any front end of your choice, right? So it's a lightweight widget that you can use. It comes with the built-in API that you are able to use. But essentially, if you don't want to use this, you want to directly use this API and build your front end any way you want, you can do that as well. So it's similar to using any API-based communication.
We're going to show you how to do both, using a widget and using an API.
That's great. So because that gives a complete picture of how to do an integration with any workflow on BuildShip, right? So it need not be just this assistant use case. You can have like something very simple like, hey, every time this API is called, do a bunch of things. Or if a Stripe payment comes in, do these things and put this data somewhere. So you can have any kind of operational use case, AI workflow use cases. Yeah, so essentially the possibilities are endless in this style of building. So yeah, now let's jump into Webstudio and share how to integrate this. So let me stop my screen share. Any questions in the between? If anyone wants to ask some questions, we can go through that. Cool. I see some questions. Maybe, yeah, I think it'll make more sense when people look at the app in complete picture. So Oleg, if you want to share your screen, I can hand it over to you.
Oh, I didn't share it. Give me one second.
All right.
Oh, it is supposed to be sharing.
Yeah, it's started sharing now. Yeah. Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Cool. All right. So what we want to do first is to create a project. I'm just gonna go. This is my account that I already have. I'm gonna create a project. We're building a chat. And now, so our first case is how do we actually integrate any widget-like thing that you can copy from, millions of websites that provide the widget kind of functionality. So in this case, I'm gonna add the embed, HTML embed component, and enter the code snippet that we have already provided from BuildShip. And I'm copying basically that. Okay, maybe you should show. Did you show where to get this snippet from BuildShip?
Yeah, so we can post that link at the end. But essentially, on BuildShip, once you ship, you'll get a button in which you can copy this, and it's like the playground kind of thing that I shared, where at the very bottom you can copy this snippet.
Exactly. So now I basically pasted. I didn't do anything at all. I don't need to understand this code. I just copied this snippet like any other snippet, any other widget on the internet, and now I can say client only because this doesn't need to run on the server. The interesting thing about Web Studio, which is kind of our specialty, is it runs on Cloudflare workers and it does server rendering. So if you don't turn this off, it's actually going to server render. It's going to run on the server. In this case, it's a widget. It doesn't need to be run on the server. And I could run it on the canvas right now, right here. Or I can toggle the preview, and I don't know if this is going to work. It would be nice if it does, but live. And it doesn't work. Oh, it works.
There it goes.
It took a few seconds to load. Yeah, maybe because of streaming on my internet connection. No, it works. It actually works. All right, so this is effectively already a functional widget. It works. I could publish right now. What we could also do is, so this button was part of the widget code, and you cannot customize it visually using Builder UI because it's hard-coded in here. So what we could do is we could take this attribute that we need to make this button functional, because the code is relying on this attribute to be present. We can remove this button from the widget. And then we add a Web Studio button. And we place it above the widget. Let's say hi. And now we add the same attribute that I just copied to the button, so the widget can find it. And let's see if it works. Yes, it does. Now, the benefit of doing this is I can actually do anything I want with this button. I can say the background should be maybe black and the text should be white, and maybe the corners should be rounded. Normal, visual development type of thing. So you can do anything with this button. All right, that's basically it. Now I can publish, and it's going to work on the published website. While I'm publishing, should we move on to the next case?
Yeah, I think this is great because you literally plug it in and it starts working, and you can customize the button, place it anywhere you want, etc. And once it's published, we can show how the chat experience looks like, etc. But yeah, it'll be good to show if someone were to just use the API, not this widget, how that experience looks like, and in general, how that is the basic use case of how someone can integrate a BuildShip workflow in like Web Studio, right? So essentially, it allows someone to use an API. So that'll be an interesting way to showcase as well.
This is, by the way, the published site and the functional button.
Cool.
So let's move over to BuildShip and see what needs to be done. Oh, actually, yeah. So let's give them an overview what it takes to connect any front end to an API, right? So what are the steps? I would say let's jump into BuildShip and go step by step, and then we like to provide an overview, and then we actually do it.
Yes, let's do that. So
also good for me for getting back.
Yeah. So one thing to showcase here is like, this is one use case, right? Like you can do the chat type of experience, but say, suppose let me go to some hello world, right? Very simple one. Let me get rid of all these nodes that we don't want for the purpose of the demo. And if I were to like delete the API one and say something very simple, like, for example, email trigger, this one is just completely backend, and it basically allows you to get an email, and every time this email gets an email, it triggers a workflow. So then you can do certain things like storing that in a database or doing whatever workflow. But if you are wanting to connect it to a front end, you need to basically have this REST API call, which is a way to trigger a backend workflow. So you can trigger it two ways. You can trigger it either with a get or a post, right? So if you do get, it means it's a simple API call with the query parameters. You can pass whatever parameter you want to pass and test your workflow, see if it works. And if it's a post, you'll essentially mostly put data in the body, and you can test the workflow as well. And when you do ship it, so for example, if I were to just return something very basic like hello, and when you do ship it, you essentially get a URL, and that's the URL you'll use on the front end. So this URL, you can copy it as it is, or you can export it as an API, like a open API spec, or something that you can import into other places. So these are some of the options that show up. But going back to the workflow that we were talking earlier, which is chat with Google Sheets, this also has similar API. So if you're not using the chat widget, you can basically just use this, do a post type of call on your front end. And so yeah, that will be what Oleg will now show to see how you can integrate an API in the front end.
Exactly. All right, let's get to it. So I'm gonna create a new page for chat. Let's call it chat. And so first thing first, let's do a little bit of visual building and create an interface. I'm gonna throw in a few boxes, a box that will hold the container, a box that will hold the form with our input, a box that will hold buttons. Everything is a bunch of boxes. And boxes, boxes, nothing special. Boxes actually any element that is effectively doing only semantic meaning for HTML. So things like a div, an article, etc., etc. Which is why there is no reason to have for each of them a separate component. That's why we just call it a box for simplicity reasons. So I could call them something like, let's say, the app, and buttons, but I don't have to. It's just for the sake of visual understanding. All right, so in the form, we are going to be needing an input for the message that we want to send to the chat. And let's do some layout. We want this container to be full size. We want it to be flex positioned, and we want it to be column, because we want the input on top and the button below. Now this input is too short. I want it to go the full size. I'm gonna use 100%, and I want the buttons. By the way, we need a button that will be submitting this form. I'm gonna call it submit or send. So let's give it a little bit of space and a little bit of padding on the opposite sides. And I actually want this button to be on the right side. Oops. Let me put it at the end. Actually, here. This thing is incredibly useful. You don't need to think about where it needs to go. You just click it like in Figma. All right, so the form is there. What else needs to be done? I don't like this input. It needs to be a bit bigger. Let's make it like, I don't know, 40 pixel, and give it some styling. Let's say border. Let's give it some radius. Same with the button. All right. Okay, so what else do we need? We need a place where the answers from AI are going to be rendering. So I call this an app, but actually, no, it's fine. Okay, so let's use a paragraph for the text that we are going to be rendering. Call it response. And for now, I think we are good. We can, that's basically already everything you need from, functional perspective to have the UI you need. I'm gonna add a little bit of space here. And okay, now let's actually do the connection to the backend.
Yeah.
Right. So first thing we need is to fetch the data that is going to be, actually, no. The first step is when you submit something. If I say anything in the input, I want to send it. And when I send it, it's a normal form. It's how HTML works. The form needs some kind of name. Let's say input or query. No, actually, let's call it prompt, because that's the prompt. And so when we submit it, we are actually changing the URL, the query string of the window, because that's how normal, form works. To see what's actually happening, let's send something. Let's say hello and send. And being in the builder, you don't see what's actually happening, but you can if you go to the body and use the variable that is called system. System variable is showing you the things that are normally available in the browser. So in this case, we actually need to access the search parameter. And I can see it's not there for some reason. Let's see. It should be actually over here. It's not. I'm missing something. Is the button? Oh, here, a little mistake I made. I placed buttons outside of the form. They are supposed to be inside of the form. And this is how we move it inside. So now, if I send, and now we lost the spacing because it's supposed to be over here. Form, by the way, can also be styled. And column, and a little bit of gap. That's it. So now if I send it and say hello, we should actually get the result in the system variable inside of the query. Yes. So so basically the URL query, the thing that is part of the URL, is going to look like this. It's going to have a prompt equals hello. And I'm going to show you later how it looks like in production. And this is the important part. This is what we need to use as a query and send it to the backend, because that's what user is searching for. Now, let's create this resource that is going to be fetching this data and submitting this search. To do so, I can create this variable actually anywhere, but I chose to do it right where it's being used. Let's call it assistant. The resource is the type, and now I'm gonna need a URL that we are going to be posting it to. So I need to get this URL. Can you please send it to me, or how do we access it now?
So yeah, it's available in the chat embedded widget as well, but I'll also send it here in that chat as well. You
Oh,
can
okay.
copy.
I found it. You just sent it to me. I found it.
Yeah,
Found it.
cool.
All right. So this is the URL. Now next, let's get back to BuildShip and look at how am I supposed to know how to send the data that backend requires in order to process the request. Because I think it's important to know what needs to be sent, right?
Yeah, so let me actually show that really quick. So essentially, the API is expecting a few variables, right? So here, if you look at the variables, it will be clear. So it requests it expecting a message and a thread ID. So thread ID, if you do want to maintain a conversation, but for the purpose of the demo here, we'll just say message, right? This is the message that the request API is expecting. So this will be the prompt from the front end. It's just a single word message. And then in response, what it's giving back is again a message response. So that's what you will be showing when the response is received from the API. And once the request comes in, we can also look at the logs to see if it successfully came in, and we'll do the testing at the end. Cool. So let me hand it over back to you. So you'll essentially need to send as part of the API the message word.
The message up. So basically, the request is a post request. By the way, can you see my screen?
Yes, yeah, but I was just trying to configure
Okay.
the layout differently so that that screen shows up. You can
So
also zoom in a bit if you would like.
so what I need to send is a post request where the body contains a message, a key message, and the value is what user has been searching for, right?
Yes.
So to just do the test without connecting it to actual message, I'm gonna send hi to your backend,
Yeah.
and see that we get the response. And by the way, right now by default the body of the post request is a text, but we are trying to actually create a JSON. So what needs to be done additionally, because we are sending a JSON request, it's not text,
Right.
is to set the headers for content type. And it gets automatically converted to actual JSON string. Now, let's try and see if you actually see in the logs that I'm going to send you a request with the message hi. I'm going to close this now.
Yeah.
Open the variable editor, and you probably already have seen the request. If not, I'm going to hit refresh and make. Can you show if?
Yeah, I think I got the request, but I think the JSON, the formatting might be an issue. Something might want to double check. Let's see. Yeah, I think the formatting, you could double check.
Should be actually right. Oh, of course. Okay, so JSON needs to be JSON string needs to be in quotes.
Yeah.
And this is something that I shouldn't be doing manually, but I will show you later how to do it properly with the expression. So let me try again.
Yeah.
Do you see it?
Just a second. Let me refresh. So the request is sent, is it, like, already? Oh yeah.
Should be.
Oh, let me share my screen actually. So yeah, as I said, like, you can see the logs here of every request coming in. So previous one, it was giving an error saying that JSON formatting is the issue, but as you can see now, it's looking good. The incoming request, as you can see here, was just, let me actually expand this a bit more. So yeah, the request message, it's having the body should be somewhere here. Let's see the query. Yeah, here is the body. The message is hi. Yes.
All right. So first contact is made.
Yes.
Let's keep building. So now what we actually want to do is not just send a static hi, but what we want is we want to send what user has typed. And what user has typed has been already submitted query string of the URL. So what we want is we want to grab this query string from the URL and submit it as part of the request, right? So what I want is I want this message, and I want the value to be the query. Since we are actually editing a JSON string here, oops, I just did something. I'm not sure what I did. Going to have to repeat this process. 1 second. Actually, it's weird that it didn't save. But okay. Meta is post. Application JSON. All right. Creating the binding now again. And here we go. So I typed as, and it auto-completed to the system variable, and the system variable is the variable that contains the browser information that we need. Then I typed dot again to get to this search, which I showed you earlier in the inspector. And inside of this search, we have this variable we called prompt, which is basically the name of the input. And right now it has the value hello. So this is the JSON that we are now going to be sending as body as part of the request. All right. So I'm closing this one, closing this one, and we are done here. You should be seeing now the new request that has the message hello.
All right, let's try it out. Cool. So let me just refresh quickly to see the latest logs. Okay, cool. So here it is. Yeah, hello is coming in. All good.
Nice. Okay. Next step. We send the hello. Now we want to get the response. And so how do we get the response? We want to render the response as text, right? As this paragraph text. For this, we are creating a binding on text content property. And we are going to be using our variable that we just created, which is called, we called it assistant. And we are going to be searching now where is the right data that we want to render here. And I could be going right away and finding the data here and, going through the auto completion process, or I could as well look at the entire data that has been previously fetched and look at it. And that's it. That's where the data is. So it's data.message.
Great. So that's the response, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's the response. And so I'm going to go here and say data and dot message. And that's it. That's the previous response that we have fetched. It's now displaying here.
Yeah,
and
great.
I think we're done. I'm going to publish this. And while it's publishing, I'm going to try and use it in preview here. Let's see if it works. What should I ask it?
You
Is
can
there
ask,
anything
yeah.
that's specific to the document
Yeah.
that you made it aware of? What is the document?
So it's a document with different product or like a furniture shop information. So you can ask something like suggest some coffee table, right? Like you can ask something like that, and it'll yeah.
What kind of products do you have in the document? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, so think about it like, say, suppose this widget or this thing is in the website of a furniture company, right? The user is basically somebody's trying to buy something, so they might ask question like, "Hey, what are the coffee tables you have?" Right? Something
okay.
like that. Yeah.
What coffee tables do you have? All right, let's see. I just submitted it. It's probably gonna take a little bit of time to answer. I think it's like a few seconds, right?
So does it also replace the previous response?
Oh, nice. Paragraph you can edit. So we received the answer, but it didn't render the answer.
Yeah. I
Let's
can
see
also
what.
check from BuildShip side what is the response sent just to make sure.
Paragraph you can edit sounds like the placeholder text.
Right.
Sounds
So
like it didn't receive. Oh, I think it's because we didn't get any message, and it's made the it rendered the fallback, the thing that we originally had. Let me try and inspect the value that we have right now.
right.
It didn't answer anything at all.
So the response goes into the message. You have attached that to the message, right? From the output.
Yes. Let's have a look at your screen. How do you debug this situation? We lost. What I want to see is what did I send to you and what was the response from AI. Also, ideally, how long did it take? What happened?
Yeah, so essentially, basically, let's see this, right? Like incoming request. Yeah, what coffee table do you get? The result is that we have identified beautiful selection of coffee tables, etc. So it's inside this JSON with the message with this kind of a response.
Oh, and I can see the problem. It took 17 seconds OpenAI to answer this message.
Yeah,
Right?
because depending on like what kind of questions, because it's hitting a function and a tool, that's kind of what it is. So if you ask like a very general question that doesn't go to the tool, for example, here as you can see, it went to the OpenAI assistant, and the assistant actually went to the Google Sheets to get information, right? Whereas the previous one, it basically was just answering a general purpose thing where you ask a question around hi or something, and it basically responds hey, I'm this kind of an assistant. So that doesn't take a lot of time. Whereas if it's connected to your database and tools and it has to do something like that, it takes obviously a few more seconds than that.
So we need to figure out how to first of all show to the user that it's still fetching, and second, see that we don't have a timeout. Because most likely what happened is there was a timeout.
Okay. And one thing we have right now, that could potentially be interesting. I think, given the scope of this stream, obviously we cannot cover everything, but we do have like ability for streaming and like thread and things like that. So that could be interesting for a future option. But yeah, let me share your screen back again.
To check something simple. And by the way, we have already published, so I'm gonna go to the published site now.
Yeah.
And do the same. And so let me try and ask it something very simple. What should we ask it? Who are you?
Yeah. Like, what are you? Yeah, exactly. I think so. And even the other one that you have, the widget, right? That one could be interesting to ask the same question on coffee table.
There you go. The answer is I'm an Azure Home Specialist.
Yeah, there you go. And how about the other widget, the embedded widget, if you want to showcase that could handle, I think, the response.
Oh, yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if it can actually answer the exact same question.
Yeah.
What was the question? What coffee tables do you have to offer? So I think this widget is a little bit more mature than what we have built yet, and it should be handling the loading state. Yeah, it has a loading state, and it should be handling long wait time.
Yeah. And very soon, it's going to also have the streaming. So, sometimes the reason it looks like it's long is because OpenAI is fetching the entire data and serving it. So it has to wait for the full response, versus actually in most cases, you will see the response streaming and it looks faster. So as you can see here, it's structured data as well. So it's more clear, and you're able to add more things like links and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think chat-based interfaces are really good when it can stream, and we don't have the ability yet to stream the response. And this is something we should have a new type in the variables field, which is called instead of resource, it should be called maybe like streaming resource or something like this. And then you can actually do the same thing but get the stream. And well, if we add it, it's going to basically do the same thing but streaming. Nice. It works.
Awesome, great. So I think this is a great example, right? Like, this is obviously just like a base starting point. People can take it and use both platforms to tweak it any way they want. And that's kind of the beauty of low code kind of visual tools, where you have that flexibility to start fast, but you can also like tweak things as you want. And I think the assistant chat widget is great for embedded kind of experience, but what you showcased of like how you connect it with an API and make it as part of your website or app kind of experience, that's also interesting, because not all interactive experience is a chat, right? Sometimes you might want to take actions on the website that does something else somewhere else, like in a database or a form, or like put something somewhere. It need not be like a response in this kind of style. The response can be very simply like, thanks for your submission, but actually behind the hood is doing something intelligent, where it's using some tool that is connected to your commonly used tools and database and doing certain actions. So yeah, this is, I think, super interesting. We do have some questions streaming in, but I think before we go into the questions, I'll love to learn, like, if someone is brand new to Web Studio, how can they get started? Like, what is the base?
By the way, I was just looking at this, and what's interesting. I'm gonna get back to your question in a sec. What's interesting here is that since we added this input as a query parameter, this response and this question became basically instantly shareable, like you expect from the web. So this is part of the URL. I could send it to someone, and they would get the response. I could also render the query in here as an input if I wanted to. So that's interesting, because this is an instantly shareable experience. And it's like, what's interesting about Web Studio, it's actually server rendered. This is not a client widget that you could do, I don't know, with Webflow or this type of tool. This is actually server rendered. It's fetching this response from the worker on the server near your location, and then providing it as part of the response. We can see this because if you go to the document and you go to network, let me refresh. and we can see that this is actually all server rendered.
Got it. Cool.
For some reason, the debugging tool is not showing me the response. Right, it's
Yeah, maybe you need to send it again.
it's not working right. It should be because, oh, maybe it's because it's a streaming response. It's like not streaming, but it's really here. No, it works. Let's see. I wanna find the actual text that was responded with in the body. Yeah, here it is. Resources, the assistant resource, and there it is. The messages server rendered, and it's part of the document. Here go. There it is. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Yes, here it is. This is the answer. It's part of the document. That means whatever you build this way, if it's a directory, I don't know, like a list of items, your team, whatever it is, it's server rendered, it's SEO friendly, it's cached on the edge, it's really fast.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
I mean, right now it's slow because the response on itself is slow, but things that get cached entirely, they're going to be instant.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. And I think, basically, I think we have a lot of people who would be keen to explore the tools together, so we can share like the good starting kind of resources for both, right? Like for Web Studio, where is the go-to place?
Well, there are two places. I would probably recommend to start with Docs, which is, if you go to the landing page, resources and documentation. And I mean, it's still quite work in progress, but there is a lot of stuff that we have already prepared in here. And then we have a lot of those documents are with the video that explains how everything works. For example, this one. And we have a YouTube channel, which is also called Get Web Studio. And here you will find, for example, the Web Studio University with a lot of lessons. So we kind of got a lot of basics covered, not everything, of course. And then, of course, you should join our Discord, because when you hit something that isn't covered by any of these, and by the way, this documentation site has AI search, something that visually, and probably in the next iteration, I'm going to build this documentation site inside of Web Studio and provide the AI search by pointing the search to the same documentation site. So you can, instead of reading the documentation site, you could be building this widget, and it will be answering you by reading the documentation itself.
We also have the website Q&A where you can give a website and start chatting with it, so that could be interesting as well. But good to learn that all these kind of resources exist. And similarly, like I think BuildShip also same kind of style. You can go to buildship.com and start with our documentation site as well. So on buildship.com, we have like a bunch of resources. YouTube is a great place as well. We have a lot of demo apps and tutorials that you can start with. We have templates that you can clone and build with, and we have like a good community on Discord as well, so you can join that. As I said, like templates probably are the best place because it gives you the closest idea of what you want to build. We have lots of AI assistants, of course, not just the Google Sheets, like website Q&A, I just said, Telegram bot, chat with your database on Superbase and whatnot. And we have like a lot of internal tools as well, right? Like if you want to take like a video and compress them, or if you want to put something in an S3 bucket, or if you want to create vector database for use later, right? We have hybrid search, vector search, so you can then use that in your website, like a search bar. Yeah, so it'll be great for you to explore and learn from a template and start building that way. All right, cool.
We
So
got
I think
we got a few
some
questions.
questions. Yeah.
One is, can we listen to real-time events from Firestore? Well, you would probably want to listen to real-time events from the client only. You don't need to server render it. And right now, the best way to do it is to just use HTML embed component, write the event listener with JavaScript, and update the data like you would normally do with code. Doing this same thing without writing a single line of code would be actually really nice. And I think we'll get there. So what we need is as a resource that can handle streaming responses. And a way to bind the answers to like basically it's already working, the bindings are already working. So yeah, I think actually I'm not sure how exactly the Firestore API is working. If it uses streaming responses, then
Yeah.
just adding
So
a source
we
would
have
be.
like on BuildShip side, we have, you can listen to a change, right? Like you can obviously do CRUD type of operation on Firestore data, but we also have this kind of new triggers of like, hey, Firebase authenticated user has signed up, then trigger a workflow, or changes occur in Firebase database, then we want to do something. So that's coming soon as well. But we have for example, if you're using Superbase, we already have this thing where any data updates or like a new row in a Superbase table, then you can trigger a workflow, for example, right? So data, you can listen to data changes, and then that could be serviced on like the front end, right? You could possibly be maybe if you don't have like the real time listeners, you can service via an API. That could be an option for indirect listening to a database. So yeah.
You know what is interesting? I've never seen this done before. Maybe it's actually the best way to do it. Before that, nobody was building streaming responses, right?
Yeah.
We have been all using WebSockets and stuff to get messages, events. What if we actually do a streaming response? This response is going to be like never finishing, and as the events come in, we
Yeah.
listen. This is low level. I think we should explore a little bit what would be the best way to universally build event-driven things.
Yeah.
Like a
Great.
backend that is universally streaming or like sending those events, and we only build one thing that works for anything,
Yeah.
any real time. That would be really interesting. Universal real-time interface.
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
think the real-time interfaces are definitely interesting. I see another question here which could be interesting, which is, are there any resources for connecting to an e-commerce site like Shopify? Um,
Yeah, so this functionality that I just showed you is basically brand new. We just released it a month ago, and I literally haven't tried using Shopify API yet. So I think if you try, it might actually just work. But on the other hand, to create a full, so to be clear, our goal is to be able to build an e-commerce front end, to talk to the Shopify API, to be able to put article in a shopping cart, to do anything any online store would need to do. So this is actually our high priority item on the roadmap. And to be honest, the way we build Webstudio, where it's being deployed in Cloud for Workers, and Shopify, it's technically a match made in heaven, because like Shopify API is actually distributed through Cloud for Workers. So the distance between our front end and Shopify API is going to be nearly instant. So performance is going to be amazing. The only thing that we need to figure out is how do you place an item into a shopping cart? How do you update the shopping cart? And all of those interactions. So technically, we might be missing a few things here and there to make all the functionality work without writing any code. If you write a little bit of code, you can 100% do it today. But like simply making all those interactions are right now not possible visually, unless
yeah.
you simplify the experience somehow. I mean, it could be possible today, but we are going to get there. We're going to get there. It's a little bit.
Yeah, maybe this is a good place to also use BuildShip. We have the AI generated notes, and someone recently did the Shopify notes. So we are actually going to publish them as well. So that could be interesting where you can put things in the cart, listen to,
Is it
check out.
simplifying working with Shopify API?
Yeah, exactly. So you can have like a trigger that is a Shopify trigger, or you can have simple APIs that does actions like listing the cart items, or like listing some things and
Oh,
like putting things and stuff like that. Yeah.
so the point is to not have to fully, study the Shopify API and
Yeah.
still be able to build this experience. So you kind of simplified it in a way that is, easier to connect to any front end.
Exactly. So we'll have in the future, like very soon, some way to have nodes where you have this no code experience, right? Where each node is just filling a box where you fill the API key and whatnot. But then you have the flexibility of code if you want to. So that's why we have people who have already built it, where it's not in our integration list yet. So what that does is like you have a no code like way to work with Shopify APIs. And that could be offer like a template if someone is wanting to use it along with Web Studio, right? So that's an option. Yeah, I think something we can collaborate on. So another question here is a good one, where can you build internal dashboards with Web Studio and
I
BuildShip?
was just reading the exact same question. The answer is yes, and it's actually very good at this because dashboards are nothing but data connected to a UI. So you like the functionality that we are still missing is not actually needed for dashboard. So yes, it's actually going to be perfect for this.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these backend workflows, if you want to do that kind of internal dashboard use case, right? Like sending emails connected to SendGrid, those kind of things, BuildShip can come in the picture.
There is another question about Next.js.
Right.
So somebody, so we get this question a lot. I cannot wait to get to the point where we are actually officially supporting this case. Right now we don't officially, but so the case that is quite popular is how do I combine visual building experience? Let's say you have designers, marketers, maybe CEO of the company wanting to build a landing page, and then you want to integrate it as part of your entire offering because you want to have the application and the website all being served from the same hosting provider. In this case, since they're asking about Next.js, I assume it's also hosted on Vercel. And so the question is, first of all, can I host Web Studio on Vercel? Yes. Web Studio CLI is basically fetching the data from Web Studio, building a Remix app, and then you can deploy it to Vercel with Vercel CLI or anywhere else.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to combining these two, the question is like the apps, like the frameworks, they are not working together. Like no framework on the internet is working with one another, right? So what you really want, and where I want Web Studio to get to, is Web Studio acting as a component builder. Like it creates the components, and it does it already today. It creates React components, and you build your app using any framework, any technology you want, and then you import those components in your framework. So you are handling the routing, you are handling the architecture, you're doing you do you, and all you take from Web Studio is the components. And that means either one specific component, let's say one button or one feature, or like multiple features, entire screen, entire page, whatever. You should be going as little or as big. You should be just able to import those components and use them. So we are still missing a few things to get there, but we'll get there.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, and I think on the BuildShip side, yeah, it can work with any kind of front end and front end framework. It's just like an API, so you can use it with anything. Um, there's another question. I think we can wrap it up after this, which is um, integration with Stripe checkout and subscriptions.
Yes, it should already work. I don't see any reason out of top of my head why it shouldn't.
Yeah.
It should work. Really, the question is, do you want just a simple, widget? Then you don't need from Webstudio much. You just render the snippet they give you, and it will just work on the client. Or you want a deep integration. You want Webstudio directly talk to Stripe's API and do something, and that's possible too. Same way we just demonstrated it worked with BuildShip. And by the way, you probably can connect Stripe to
Yeah.
BuildShip, use it with BuildShip.
Yeah, we
For
have actually a Stripe trigger itself, which means anytime a new subscription is created or a new, you can basically pick up any kind of data points with your Stripe account directly. You just need to provide the key and it's securely stored in a secret manager, etc. So you can trigger a complete workflow on your Stripe account based on any kind of events.
So the interesting thing about BuildShip is kind of you learn it once and then you get all the integrations that already work with BuildShip. So once you learned how to connect Webstudio to BuildShip, you can connect to the rest of the world.
Exactly. So, and if something is missing, right, like we have a lot of hundreds of integrations, but what we have seen is actually people would want to connect to something obscure, like, something in Web3 or like a, construction tech, something like you can generate your own integration with AI, where as long as it's an API that you want to connect with or like a NPM package or something, you can ask AI to generate with code because under the hood, obviously it's code. So you can tweak it and connect to everything. So yeah, that, it's like opens up possibilities for integrations. And kind of like final question actually is there a way to generate PDF template and email that through BuildShip? So we have actually a generate PDF template, which allows you to generate PDF either from like a HTML kind of template, or you can define what a kind of template you want. And then you have like a workflow for generating the template. And then that PDF can be attached and sent via email, either via tools like SendGrid, Resend, or other kind of tools that are emailing tools that are available.
One question that we get a lot for understandable reason is, can you build a blog with Webstudio? And I'll broaden this question. Can you build a CMS-driven site with Webstudio?
Yeah.
So we built Webstudio and intentionally without any backend, because if we built one backend at some point in the company stage, we would be sort of competing with our backend against every other CMS, every other database provider, every tool on the internet, and we don't want this internal tension. This is why I kind of intentionally I've been fighting since day one against building anything backend related. And so regarding CMS, blog, or whatever content type it would be, yes, we are working on it. We were trying to launch it already like yesterday, but we are still figuring out the details. Effectively, what we are building there is a way to connect any CMS that has an HTTP API and let the CMS generate not only the content itself, which is already possible using resource, but also generate the pages. So a CMS is effectively a combination of URL structure, generated pages, and the page contents. The rest is basically configured inside of the CMS, and all Webstudio needs to do is to get this data and allow user to configure it. But what we do is not just integrating one CMS. What we do is a universal way to configure URLs very flexibly. You can configure any URL, connect it to the CMS, and make sure that like literally any CMS can work with Webstudio. This is what we're doing. This is why it's taking quite a bit of time.
Right.
And we're very close, and I will not say the exact date, but we are very close to launching the first integration. And then moving on from there, basically any user will be able to create their own integration with any CMS, and all it takes is configuring a bunch of resources, just the way we did it with BuildShip a few moments.
Actually, that's very interesting. So you're saying that with an API, if you're able to fetch data from a CMS, you can then configure it to your CMS?
Yes. I mean, there is no CMS in Webstudio, but
right. Okay.
Webstudio is going to be a CMS backend driven frontend. Like the frontend that can generate pages, content, URLs, SEO, sitemaps, all of this stuff that you
Got it.
expect from CMS. And by doing so, we can cover quite literally anything you want, like any CMS. I mean, I'm talking not just, making a small blog with 10 pages, because like if you have a blog with like, I don't know, like 20 articles, you don't need a CMS for that. You can just
Yeah.
build it. When I'm talking about CMS, I'm talking about like any size of CMS. If it's like 10,000 articles, 100,000 articles, WebStudio doesn't care, because to WebStudio, it's like one page at a time, it's one URL at a time, it's one frontend, one layout, or maybe multiple, but it's not 10,000 of them. So the way we build it is actually going to allow you to use this frontend to build any size of websites. So
Got it. That's cool.
you can build a monster, like enterprise grade website with 1,000 pages or something like this.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I'm going to show you something really quick, actually, because this seems super interesting, and maybe we should have something once you have it released. Is that actually because we get the API and you can connect to say Airtable? Technically, you can create a CMS on Airtable and service it via that API to WebStudio. And we actually have our own inbuilt database as well, which is like a lightweight Airtable like UI. Under the hood, it's a Firebase data, so you can manage your Firestore data in this kind of a spreadsheet UI with lots of column types and things like you typically do, and then effectively service this via a API as well. So this could be a good way to have your CMS once it's
Right.
released.
The only thing that needs to be understood, the difference between table and a CMS, is the pages and their relationships. Like because you want to be able to configure what type of content you want to have in which page, and is there any relationship between the fields. There is a lot of things that you would want to be configuring, and like in theory you could be doing this with spreadsheets. Like
Yeah.
you could use, if you were curious, you would be able to build probably a complete CMS using spreadsheet. But
Yeah.
CMS, like proper CMS backends, they have better tools to create really complex CMS
Yeah.
structure and different types of contents and stuff like this.
Right. Awesome. Great. That's very exciting stuff. So, yeah, hopefully you'll all enjoyed this session. And if you have any, further questions, join the Discord of the respective products, and you can, follow along and build and ask your questions away. We'll also be sharing a bunch of relevant, useful resources below this video's link. And thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much for inviting, and thanks everyone who has been live with us. If you want more of those, we can do it. Let us know, and we will do more. Send us questions what you want to be shown, and we might demo it.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Oleg. Thanks for chatting. See ya.